Week 2 with a newborn, and I'm still making YouTube videos. Pretty pumped about that. Today's video is about the Insta360 One X. And the main question I'm gonna be looking at today is the Insta360 a GoPro killer? Before I dive in too deep on this, a couple of quick channel updates. 7,000 subscribers. Craziness, you guys are rad. You guys are so rad that Epidemic Sound, who I use for all my music, reached out to me and was like, we see all these rad subscribers you have. Do you want to be an ambassador? Of course I do. I love Epidemic Sound. I use them for all my music, and you're now looking at the newest Epidemic Sound ambassador. Hopefully I'll be able to do like giveaways or something like that with them in the future. I have no idea of the scope of my ambassadorship. But for now, there's a link in the description that gets you a 30-day free trial with Epidemic Sound, which is pretty dope. I'll do a video in the future how I use Epidemic Sound or why. Mainly because it's hard to get music for YouTube and they make it easy. Today though is the day. Insta360 One X. I've had it for about a month now. And the main question I was trying to figure out, because they pitched it as an action camera, was, can this camera replace this camera? To start off, if you are entirely unfamiliar with 360 cameras, this little tiny camera has two lenses on either side shooting opposite directions. They both shoot a 200-degree angle, which is crazy. The camera software smushes that together and you create a 360 world that you can then look around in post. A quick moment for specs. At 30 frames a second, this thing's doing 5.7K. At 50 frames a second, it's doing 4K. At 100 frames a second, it drops down to 3K. Keep in mind though, that 5.7K is the entire 360 world. And if you're anything like me, I don't like the bulb look, so I want to use a 360 camera so I can reframe later. And when you do that with this camera, the 16:9 reframe is about 1080, which for a camera this size is still amazing. It also takes 18 megapixel photos, but again, that 18 megapixels is the entire 360. So if you then look around later in the app and you kind of crop in on something, it'll be less than 18 megapixels. But still pretty good. Those are the general specs of the camera, but let's get into what it's like to use this camera and then we'll get to, can it replace my GoPro? First thing is first, it is super small. To be just that. That's the entire 360 camera. Focus. That is the entire 360 camera right there. And that's crazy. Back in the day, 360 cameras were either these huge devices or it was a camera array where you had cameras pointing in every direction and then you imported all that footage into software and then you had to smush it all together. It was a pain in the ass. And it's why I always said 360 cameras were not a consumer market product. It was like for the pros and VR people to play with. Now though, this is it. This is the whole thing. And it's 5.7K, which is pretty good. The other crazy thing with this camera is that it's doing that processing totally live. So while you're running the app on your phone and waving the camera around, you can look around the 3D world live in your app and it's already stitched together. The second thing I want to talk about, and this is what I think the biggest pro of this camera is and why it might beat my GoPro. And that's that all of the framing or composition is done in post. Again, if you haven't used one yet, this is how it works. You hit start, you hold this thing out, you don't really point it at yourself or at anything. You just kind of decide, I want a high shot, or I want a low shot, or I want the camera to be behind me or to the right of me. You choose that while you're filming, but then you decide where the camera looks in post. And let me explain why that's such a big deal. If you've used a GoPro on a selfie stick, you hold it out like this, you get it so it's pretty much pointing at you, and then you do your thing. And the joke with GoPro is like, I don't know, let's see what I got. And the reason is because you're snowboarding or you're surfing or you're doing something. You're even just like jumping rock to rock and you're holding this thing out there while you do your thing. and you're hoping it's pointing at you, and a lot of times it's not. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into post with some GoPro footage, looked at it, and I had it out here behind me, pointing at me, I thought, and my whole head was chopped off. With this, that doesn't happen. You just hold it out, and then later, you choose where it looks. And for action sports, that's huge. There's no more worrying about the camera or less worrying about the camera while you're trying to focus on bombing a mountain or like riding a wave or whatever you're doing with your action camera. So now you can just pop this thing on the stick. I can hold it behind me and bomb a mountain, and then in post, go back in and be like, this is exactly where I want the camera to look. I feel like they should advertise this as the never cut your own head off action camera, because this is for sure the cut your head off action camera. It was super weird the first couple days using this camera because I was treating it like a GoPro and I was trying to like point it at myself. I was like, one of those lenses should be looking at me, but they don't have to be, because wherever this thing is, it can see you. Like when I was skateboarding in Encinitas, I just held it up really high, and then down the block, I held it next to my skateboard. And then in post, I decided where the camera was gonna look. That is bananas. The next big feature of this camera that I kind of fell in love with was the app. Here's how it works. You film with the camera. Now you have a 360 world view. I'm not looking to create VR. I want to use a 360 camera so I can recompose later. So then I bring the footage onto the app. I open up what's called viewfinder mode, where you play your footage and hit record. As you look around, it's recording where you're looking. So you're basically in like a VR world. You're looking around like, now I want it to go there. Now I want it to look over here. Now I want a big pan shot, and then flat back here. It records all of that. And then when you export the clip, that's what it looks like. So that's what I did with the impossible shot. I filmed the entire thing, and then I went back into viewfinder mode, and I sat here like this, and as the motorcycle turned, I was like, whoa. Using a swivel chair helps because you legit do this the whole time. It looks funny, but it works awesome. And the app brings up my third thing that I'm in love with about this camera, and it's that you can take one clip and you can export it multiple ways. In a world with YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, and we used to have Vine, you have to decide which way you're gonna shoot your shot. So you're gonna choose, I want this to be for YouTube, so I'm gonna shoot it landscape, and then you go like this and you say, I want it to be portrait because I want it for Instagram. But with this camera, you can take the same shot, pull it into the app, decide, I want this shot to be 16:9, export. I want the same shot to now be 9:16, export. I want the same shot to be 1:1, export. And you haven't changed the original shot, you still have it. I have a dream, and somebody should do it. One of you should do this because I don't have a podcast. But someone that has a podcast should put this camera in the middle of a table and have like 4 people around it. Hit record on the camera, hit record on your audio gear, just do your podcast, and then go into post. You would be able to export one shot looking at this person, one shot looking at that person, one shot that way, one shot that way, and then pull all 4 shots into Premiere and jump back and forth between them. So one camera can get you 4 different shots at the same time. Somebody do that. Somebody that has a podcast, do that. I wanna see it. I'm not gonna do it, but I wanna see you do it. I wanna do a podcast, by the way. It's me and my buddy, and it's 2 dudes that know nothing. That's the working title. 2 dudes that know nothing. Next feature is something called time shift, or what they call time shift. It's basically hyperlapse on this thing. And again, it's all done in the app, so it's non-destructive to your original footage. You go out and you walk with this thing, or you ride a bike, or you ride a motorcycle. You can then go into the app, take that same clip, this time tell it where you want it to start, where you want it to end, and then say, I would like to see that hyperlapse, please. It speeds it up, it stabilizes it like crazy, makes it look like that weird hyperlapse mode, and then you export it. Again, same clip, different thing. On the Hero 7, one of the coolest features and the most frustrating features is what they call time warp. They call it time warp. GoPro time warp though is a setting you go into, you choose what speed you want it to be, and it records at that speed. So in Hawaii, we drove a lot and it just kind of had this thing sucked on the windshield. And that was cool, and we got these really cool looking hyperlapse videos, but it's only hyperlapse. There's no audio recorded. I can never do anything else with that footage. With the Insta360, I have normal footage, so I could go back and I could look around the Jeep and I could do different things with it, and I could create one long clip that's a hyperlapse. Yeah, the more I'm talking about this thing, the more I'm liking it. Finally, the invisible stick feature, this thing. Basically, what it does is cancels out the selfie stick. So the camera looks like it's just floating in space. And that's how I got the shot on the motorcycle. I didn't do anything in post. The camera does everything live in the camera, ready to go. And to explain how it does it, these are not 180-degree lenses. They're 200-degree lenses. So this camera is actually wider than 180. This camera's wider than 180 in all directions. And it just cancels out that point where the stick is. It just looks like it's your hand walking around in the video, but there's no stick in it. It's super fun to use. It seems gimmicky, but it's a cool shot. And you get things like the impossible shot from the motorcycle video. And last, it does something called tiny planet mode. Have you ever seen those shots where like someone's on an island and it's like this and it's all sky around them? I would say tiny planet mode is super gimmicky, but if you like it, do it. I'm not judging you. I'm totally judging you. All right, with all that said, is the Insta360 a GoPro killer? Not yet, but really soon. One, it's not nearly as durable as a GoPro. I lose a lot of GoPros, and the reason I lose the GoPro is that I put it into weird places where it could get lost or damaged. This camera doesn't even have protective lens covers. So if you're just rocking this thing on a selfie stick and you take a digger and this thing goes, hits the ground, camera dead. You gotta send it back to them, get it replaced, or I don't know, buy another one. It's also not waterproof, which GoPro figured out in the GoPro 5. They got rid of the dumb case that you had to have on all the time. And these guys still sell one of those big clunky waterproof cases. I don't want that. I want this to be waterproof, please. And then lastly, the resolution and picture quality. It's not as good as the GoPro. The GoPro can do 2.7K linear mode, 4K wide mode, and that's better than what this is doing when I crop in to create that 16.9 linear mode look. But it's close. And I'm gonna tell you, this camera is probably gonna be in my bag more than my GoPro, at least coming up, because I wanna play with it more. I wanna get those really unique shots. While it's still kind of rare to have a 360 camera, I wanna be that guy that has something that's different, that looks different, that I can create something and get shots where people go, how did you get that? Soon it'll just be normal to have a 360 camera. We'll see shots like the impossible shot and just be like, oh, it's a 360 camera, I know what that is. I would say coming up, if I know I'm going in water, or I know I'm gonna put the camera in kind of a sketchy spot, I'll still grab my GoPro. But for more and more, I think I'm gonna start grabbing the Insta360. What almost bums me out about this camera is that I didn't have it earlier, because I think of all the different hikes that we went on in Maui, or our trip to Thailand and Bali, walking through the monkey forest. While it's cool to have the shots that I do have, how cool would it be to go back through old footage just for fun, sitting around, and then be like, oh, I wanna look this way. I wanna see what was behind the camera. Or you were at an event and you were filming this way, but you could just go back and look that way later. It almost bums me out that more of my old footage isn't 360. In conclusion, this is not a GoPro killer yet, but with the ability to reframe your shot in post, you make this thing waterproof, make it a little more durable. I don't know why I would grab my GoPro over the Insta360. A couple of final notes on this thing. Battery life is like 45 minutes, so you need lots of batteries or a charging pack to charge it up between shots. The learning curve for the app is about a day. It took me to kind of figure things out and understand how to edit the footage. And when you're recording, it has a green light on both sides. And since unlike my GoPro, you can't turn the light off in the app, a little bit of gaffer tape, bink, bink. Haha, now no one's the wiser that you are recording. Although it is a really weird thing that you're holding up. People probably know that you're recording. I think that's it for the Insta360 One X. I'm super pumped to see the Insta360 One X 2, but in the meantime, I'm gonna beat the hell out of this thing, for sure. This is fun. I know I was excited that I've made one video each of these last 2 weeks, but next week I think I have 2 videos coming. I had one planned about getting really stable footage with a GoPro, like good cinematic footage with this little tiny camera. But then somebody else asked another question and I was like, oh, I wanna talk about that too. So I think 2 videos are coming next week. If you haven't already, join the over 7,000 people and subscribe below. Also, I'll let you know if I get free things from Epidemic Sound. I'll just give them to you guys. You see this shelf behind me, I don't need any more stuff. 2 weeks with a baby, I'm still making videos. Woo! Why are you not focusing on the camera? Is it because you can see my face? Damn Sony and face recognition.